Coming up on Arirang News. Russian President Vladimir Putin makes a State of the Nation address blaming Western countries for its attack on Ukraine. Following his surprise visit to Kyiv, U.S. President Joe Biden is also set to deliver a speech ahead of the one-year anniversary since Russia began its invasion of Ukraine. South Korea's trade data for the first 20 days of this month indicate the possibility of an on-year drop for 5 consecutive months. This amid a sluggish global economy and slump in the semiconductor industry. Seoul High Court delivers a historic ruling for a gay couple to grant the same national health insurance rights as a heterosexual couple. This is the first time South Korea recognizing same-sex couples' rights. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in South Korea. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. Ahead of the one-year anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Russian President Vladimir Putin today, while he addressed the nation, blamed the West, repeating what he said a year ago that Moscow's invasion was necessary. U.S. President Joe Biden is also expected to deliver a speech later in the day following his surprise visit to Kyiv the day before. Our foreign affairs correspondent Choi Min-jung leads us off. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday delivered a State of the Nation address, claiming Russia had no choice but to attack Ukraine. Putin's address comes 3 days before the one-year anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. He blamed the West for causing the conflict in Ukraine and added Western countries, led by the U.S., are seeking unlimited power.
Responsibility for instigating the Ukrainian conflict, for its escalation, and for the increasing number of victims lies entirely with Western elites.
Putin also criticized the expansion of the NATO military alliance, saying they are preparing for bloodshed in the Donbas region. On the same day, U.S. President Joe Biden will be delivering his own speech in Poland, marking the one-year anniversary of the crisis. Biden is expected to address how the U.S. has rallied the world to support Ukraine and made clear that Washington will continue to stand with Kyiv for as long as it takes, as was promised during his surprise visit to Kyiv on Monday. Citing local experts and observers, China's Global Times called Biden's visit irrational and selfish and warned that it could trigger a more aggressive counterstrike from Russia. However, while the U.S. leader visited Ukraine, China's top foreign policy advisor Wang Yi headed in the opposite direction as he plans to visit Russia this week and possibly meet with Putin. This underscores the rising tensions between the world's two superpowers, especially as Washington continues to step up its military aid for Kyiv, while Beijing is accused of considering providing lethal weapon support to Moscow. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News. A UN Security Council meeting on Monday to address North Korea's most recent ballistic missile launches only ended up with the U.S. and its allies reaffirming their differences with China and Russia over ways to ease tensions on the Korean peninsula. Yoon has more.
Following North Korea's launches of 3 ballistic missiles, an intercontinental ballistic missile on Saturday and 2 short-range ballistic missile launches on Monday, the United States called for the first UN Security Council meeting of the year on North Korea. On Monday, the U.S. proposed that the UN Security Council condemn the North and hold the regime accountable for its provocations.
The United States condemns in the strongest possible terms the DPRK's February 18th and February 19th launches of 3 ballistic missiles. This included the DPRK's 9th international ballistic missile launch since the start of 2022.
But the 15-member body failed to come to a consensus due to opposition from China and Russia. The pair used their veto power to block the U.S. proposal. Moscow and Beijing had previously vetoed proposals at all 10 Security Council meetings last year that specifically discussed North Korea's missile threats.
Exclusively pursuing and piling on sanctions will only lead to a dead end. To bring the Korean Peninsula issue out of the predicament, all parties should adopt the right approach to non-proliferation and avoid double standards.
With China and Russia standing in opposition and accusing the United States of escalating tensions and provoking North Korea, the Security Council failed to come to a consensus. The U.S. ambassador called the body's lack of action worse than shameful, highlighting the graveness of the danger these missile tests bring not only to Asia, but the entire world.
The reality is that those who shield the DPRK from the consequences of its escalatory missile tests put the Asian region and entire world at risk of conflict.
The last time the Council took action on North Korea was when it adopted a resolution to strengthen sanctions in December 2017 on Pyongyang's ballistic missile and nuclear weapons programs. After Monday's Security Council meeting, 2/3 of the body's members and South Korea issued a joint statement condemning North Korea's recent missile launches. Yoon, Arirang News.
South Korea's foreign ministry says it welcomes the latest report by the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights on North Korea and vows to join global efforts to improve the human rights situation in the regime. Last week, the OHCHR released a report titled Promoting Accountability in the DPRK, referring to North Korea by its official name. It urges North Korea to acknowledge the existence of serious human rights violations and take immediate steps to end them. It also calls for UN Human Rights Council member states to take further steps to ensure accountability. The office has been submitting these reports every 2 years since 2019. South Korea conducted an air-to-air refueling drill on Tuesday, proving its ability to operate advanced fighter jets amid North Korea's growing threats to security. The Air Force mobilized its latest F-35A, the so-called Freedom Knight stealth fighter, and a KC-330 multi-purpose refueling tanker. The F-35A comes with advanced stealth and electronic warfare capabilities and flies faster than the speed of sound with a maximum speed of Mach 1.6. Its stealth function allows it to go undetected by enemy radars and infiltrate enemy territory and strike key targets. This is the first time the Air Force has publicly announced that it has carried out a refueling drill. New space is a term stems from private companies jumping in to develop their own space-related products. Around a decade ago, most space players were funded by the government of their respective countries. And for a better support, South Korean President Yoon today took a chance to invite scientists and young students and hear from them. Our presidential office correspondent Kim Do-yeon reports.
Inviting around 40 guests from the space industry to his office for lunch on Tuesday, President Yoon pledged to make South Korea the leader of the new space era and asked for them to help.
우주는 이미 기술 혁신과 경제 성장 그리고 국가 안보를 이끌어가는 핵심 동력으로 주목받고 있습니다. 그래서 여기 계신 여러분의 역할이 매우 중요합니다.
Dubbing the event as Discussions with Pioneers in Space Economy, the guests range from high school students to startups that have successfully tested their prototypes. He also took his time to see some models and learn about the progress. Models he saw included satellites as well as the first liquid-fueled engine developed by a private company.
높이를 몇 킬로까지 쏠 수 있어요?
At the moment, our goal is around 80 kilometers and the final goal is 500 kilometers.
Yoon also spoke of the size of the new space industry and said the market has grown significantly. He added, in the 20th century, space was an unknown world, an area of exploration, and an arena for tech-strong countries. But now, space is an area to create value not just for countries, but for companies also.
우주 경제에는 경계가 없습니다. 또 우주 경제는 우리에게 무한한 기회를 열어줄 것입니다. 우주 탐사와 활용, 또 이를 위한 발사체와 위성 개발, 제작, 발사, 운영은 물론 관련한 가치를 창출하는 모든 활동이 바로 우주 경제입니다.
President Yoon reiterated his plans for South Korea to launch its own space agency staffed by the nation's top scientists. He also promised government funding for the space industry in areas yet to see big growth in order to lay the foundations for a strong and successful market. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
In what could be another warning sign for the country's exports, South Korea saw exports fall on year in the first 20 days of this month. Sluggish chip industry and decreasing exports to China seem to be the major factors. Our economic correspondent Lee Dae-yeon with more.
South Korea's trade balance was in the red during the first 20 days of February. With exports exceeding imports during this period, the trade deficit amounted to almost $6 billion. The country saw a trade deficit for the 11th consecutive month in January and is expected to see another this month. According to the Korea Customs Service on Tuesday, exports declined 2.3% on year to around $33.5 billion in the first 20 days of this month. Should this trend continue throughout the rest of the coming week, there's a high possibility for South Korea to see an on-year drop in exports for 5 months in a row. One expert says this is mainly due to 2 factors.
A drop in chip exports has largely affected the overall export decline. Exports to China, too, have seen a drop due to China's COVID-19 lockdown. Some voice hope that exports may see a recovery as China reopens, but China tends to lower its industrial parts reliance in South Korea, so that's a variable as well.
In fact, South Korea's exports to China saw a decline by 22.7%, dropping for 8 months in a row. By sectors, chip exports dipped almost 44% during the period. Exports of wireless telecommunication devices dropped 25% and home appliances 38%. Some categories, on the other hand, saw a rise. Car exports soared by over 56%, petroleum products jumped 16.3%, and cargo ship exports jumped 21.7%. Meanwhile, the country's imports jumped 9.3% on year to $39.5 billion. Imports of crude oil, gas, and coal increased, while semiconductors and chip manufacturing equipment dropped. Lee Dae-yeon, Arirang News.
The number of people employed in Korea's manufacturing sector marked an annual decline last month. Now, this is reported the first on-year decline since October 2021. According to Statistics Korea on Tuesday, the total number of people employed in manufacturing in January fell 35,000 on year to roughly 4.4 million. Workers aged below 60 suffered a greater fall of 126,000, but the number of workers aged 60 and above rose by 91,000. Market insiders believe employment in the sector will continue to shrink in the months ahead in light of the sluggish exports. Consumers in the country believe inflation will average 4% over the next 12 months. This is up 0.1 of a percentage point from January and marks an increase for the second month in a row. The survey by the Bank of Korea this month links the latest consumer sentiment to higher heating bills as well as the overall hike in prices of goods and services. Meanwhile, the Composite Consumer Sentiment Index for February came to 90.2, down 0.5 point from last month. A figure below 100 means the public is more pessimistic than optimistic about the economy. Amid continued rate hikes, household loans in South Korea last year dropped on year for the first time on record. The Bank of Korea says Tuesday that last year's lending to households in South Korea fell slightly to roughly $1.3 trillion. This is a fall of around $6 billion or 0.4% from a year earlier. The central bank attributed the decline to fewer mortgage loans being taken out amid a lack of transactions in the property market. Also contributing were rising costs of borrowing and stricter lending rules. The country's household debt in the fourth quarter of last year also decreased on quarter for the first time in 10 years. Household debt comprises of lending and credit card bills that have not been paid off. Today, an appellate court here in South Korea granted a gay couple spousal coverage rights from the nation's state health insurance program. It cited no discrimination for minorities. Our political correspondent Han Sung-woo with the details.
In a landmark ruling on Tuesday, a South Korean gay couple won a lawsuit granting them the same spousal coverage that heterosexual married couples receive from the National Health Insurance Service. The Seoul High Court, according to a spokesperson, overturned a decision made by a lower court back in January last year that referenced South Korea's legal definition of marriage as a union between a man and a woman. A year before that, in February 2021, plaintiff So Sung-wook had sued the NHIS after it terminated benefits for him by disqualifying him as a dependent of his male partner and thus ordering Seoul to pay insurance premiums. Seoul said the NHIS had first covered him as a dependent under his partner's employer-based health insurance program in February 2020, but later reversed the decision after discovering they were a gay couple. In response, he has claimed they were discriminated against, considering that the NHIS provides spousal coverage to common law partners. In Tuesday's ruling, the Seoul High Court has ordered the NHIS to allow the plaintiff to file as a spousal dependent. His lawyer, as well as Amnesty International, say it's the first case of a court in South Korea recognizing the legal status of same-sex couples. Activists have hailed the verdict as a major victory for LGBTQ rights. AFP reports that the NHIS will appeal to the Supreme Court. South Korea by law does not recognize marriages between people of the same sex. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
Another powerful quake slammed the Turkey and Syria border, killing at least 8 people and injuring hundreds of others. Shin Se-byuk has the latest.
Another big earthquake with a magnitude of 6.3 struck southeastern Turkey and northwestern Syria Monday, the same regions that were devastated by a deadly earthquake 2 weeks ago. At least 8 deaths have been reported, 3 in Turkey and 5 in Syria, while hundreds of others have been injured. Turkish Vice President Fuat Oktay said the latest quake is not an aftershock from the February 6th earthquake, but rather a new, massive one, and added nearly 30 aftershocks have been detected so far. Monday's earthquake was centered in Turkey's Hatay province, where a rescue operation is underway. For many of those that are still coping with the aftermath of the initial earthquakes for 2 weeks, even the slightest tremor has them leaving their homes.
Same fear, the same feeling of unease. We cannot enter. If we do, we cannot stay. We don't know what to do. God have mercy on us. There is nothing to say.
In Syria, the earthquake has resulted in power outages and disrupted telephone and internet services in the affected regions of the 2 countries. A number of buildings collapsed as well. According to Reuters, the earthquake was felt as far away as Egypt and Lebanon. Meanwhile, with operations focused more on the survivors, authorities say more than 1 million people have been left homeless since the February 6th earthquakes. The death toll from those quakes has also surpassed 47,000 people. Experts also say the aftershocks could last from months to years. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
K-pop boy band BTS has hit 700 million views on YouTube for its music video, Save Me. The video hit the milestone on Tuesday local time, and it's the group's 11th music video to reach 700 million views. It was released in 2016 as part of the album The Most Beautiful Moment in Life, Young Forever. Separately, BTS member Suga is poised to embark on a solo world tour across 6 countries in April. K-pop has swept the world with stars like BTS and Blackpink, proving to be hugely popular. Then came K-content on the big and small screens, such as Parasite and Squid Game. Korean cultural content is being cited as one of the major motivating factors for people wanting to learn the Korean language. Our Kim Jong-sil met some of these people and files this report.
Students in this class have come from all over the world to study the Korean language. These students are from 6 different countries and all have come with different purposes in mind. But one language instructor at the institute says most students are here because of K-pop and K-dramas. Before, many students came to learn Korean to get into college or to help find a job in Korea or because they have Korean family. But recently, most of the students come because they are interested in K-culture such as K-pop, dramas, or movies. A recent CNN report quoted a Korean language expert from Columbia University as saying that Korean has become modern, cooler, and hipper. Students in South Korea seem to agree.
Especially recently, with like Netflix and all those sort of international things, there's a lot more interest growing in sort of that sort of sphere as well. And yeah, I know a lot of my friends, they sort of talk about that kind of thing, and then yeah, it's sort of grown from there.
The Korean Language Center of Korea University currently has more than 1,000 international students registered. Seoul National University, on the other hand, has been offering a special program for Japanese students since 1992. The program resumed last winter after a pause during the pandemic.
The students here just arrived last week from Japan's prestigious Keio University. They've come here to learn the Korean language and culture, but also to better understand Korea as a nation.
I'm studying Japanese politics and I found many similarities between Japan and South Korea in their culture and politics, so I decided to join the program to learn Korean.
I have a lot of interest in Korean culture, especially in entertainment, so I was hoping to learn more Korean so that I can understand it from a different viewpoint.
Since South Korea's entertainment business is at a global level, the majority of the students have the motivation to learn Korean. What I always tell them is that South Korea and China are geologically our close neighbors, so we should get along with those countries. And in order to get along with Korean people, that it's vital to learn the language.
All the students we met said they want to make the most out of their experience in South Korea. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
South Korea's 2 most decorated Olympic athletes, Jin Jong-woo and Lee Sang-hwa, have been named 2 co-heads of the 2024 Winter Youth Olympics. While announcing the leaders on Tuesday, the organizers of the Winter Youth Olympics also said that figure skating champion Kim Yeon-nam would be honorary ambassador. Jin Jong-woo is the only individual 4-time gold medalist in Olympic shooting history and the only Olympic shooter to have won 3 straight gold medals in one event, having done so in the men's 50-meter pistol from 2008 to 2016. Lee Sang-hwa, a 2-time Olympic speed skating champion, won consecutive Olympic gold medals in the 500 meters in 2010 and 2014 and a silver in 2018. The 2024 Winter Youth Olympics will run from January 19th to February 1st next year in Gangwon-do Province. Also in related news, 34 countries have urged the International Olympic Committee to uphold its ban on athletes from Russia and Belarus ahead of the Paris Games next year. According to the U.S. State Department on Monday, countries including its own as well as South Korea and host country France have issued a joint statement questioning the logic of allowing athletes from the 2 countries to participate in the Games under neutral flags while being directly sponsored by their states. The statement also underscored the strong links between Russian athletes and the Russian military as causes of concern.
Make sure to bundle up extra warm tomorrow morning as a cold front continues to sweep through the nation. Conditions will stay colder than the seasonal norms. For Seoul, morning lows will be cold at -4 degrees Celsius. For places like Daegwallyeong, where frigid easterly winds are blowing, conditions will be much colder at -10 degrees. Keep in mind that for all these regions, temperatures will feel a couple degrees lower than the actual readings. Tomorrow will be another day with wide temperature gaps with cold mornings and relatively mild daytimes. Most regions will see a gap of 10 degrees or more, so dressing in layers will be highly recommended. Also for Seoul and parts of Gangwon-do province, the air is still very dry. For those in the area, please be careful with anything that can start a fire. Tomorrow, Seoul and Daegu will be starting off cold at -4 degrees. Partly cloudy to overcast skies are expected for the daytime. Seoul will get up to 6 degrees. Daejeon 9, Gyeongju and Busan will be reaching 11 degrees. Temperatures will be hovering around the seasonal average starting on Thursday. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all for today's newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back with the most up-to-date news tomorrow. Good night.